If you walk into that chapel with that broke cowboy, Natalie, don't ever call yourself my daughter again. My mother said it over the phone while I sat in the back of a rented SUV 10 minutes from the old adobe chapel in Mesilla, New Mexico. My wedding dress covered my knees in a pool of ivory satin. Sweat gathered beneath my fingers around a bouquet of white roses, and outside the window the desert sun turned the pavement silver. I had imagined crying on my wedding day. I had not imagined my own mother would be the reason before I even reached the altar. "Mom, Matteo has a name," I said. "So does every man who sees a woman with a steady paycheck and a piece of land coming to her." The cruelty of that sentence was almost impressive. She had managed to insult the man I loved, accuse him of using me, and remind me that my family knew something about my grandmother's ranch that they had never fully explained. "Are you coming or not?" There was a pause. I could hear my younger sister, Brenda, laughing somewhere behind her. "Not if you insist on humiliating us," my mother said. "You had choices in California. Accountants. Managers. Men with clean boots. You came home to marry a ranch hand. I'm getting out of the car now. Then you're choosing him over your family." The call ended before I could tell her that family should not require a woman to abandon the person who treated her well in order to prove she belonged. I stayed in the SUV anyway. Through the windshield, I could see the bell tower of San Isidro Chapel rising above cottonwood trees. A few guests crossed the gravel lot carrying wrapped gifts. Beyond them, the Organ Mountain stood sharp against a cloudless sky. It should have been beautiful. Instead, every empty seat waiting inside felt like a verdict. I was 42 years old enough to process payroll for 300 employees at a produce distribution center in Fresno, old enough to negotiate health insurance and correct tax errors, old enough to wire money across state lines without asking anyone's permission. Yet one call from my mother had turned me back into the quiet girl who learned to apologize for needing anything. For 9 years, I had sent money to my family in New Mexico. I paid the property taxes on the Herrera Ranch after my grandmother Rosario died. I paid for a new roof after my mother sent me pictures of water dripping into metal bowls. I covered utility bills, a new water pump, fence repairs, my Uncle Aurelio's truck transmission, and Brenda's tuition for a fashion merchandising program in Albuquerque. When Mom said doctors had found a suspicious mass near her liver, I took every overtime shift I could get. I ate dinner in my car between payroll corrections and the night warehouse shift. I wore the same white sneakers until the soles cracked. I postponed dental work because Mom said her specialist required cash up front. Every month she reminded me that living in California meant I earned California money, as if rent, gas, and loneliness did not cost anything there. When I asked for receipts, she sighed. "Natalie, do you want an audit or a mother?" When I asked why the annual tax bill kept rising, Aurelio laughed. "You sit behind a desk all day. Let the people on the ground handle the ground." When I came home for Christmas, Brenda told me not to act like the ranch belonged to me just because I had paid a few bills. I smiled through all of it. Some people learn to survive by fighting. I learned to survive by making myself useful enough that no one would send me away. Then I met Matteo Alvarez. I had flown to New Mexico 2 years earlier because the ranch well had failed for the third time in 18 months. Aurelio claimed the repair would cost $14,000. That number bothered me. I had reviewed equipment invoices for a living, and the estimate looked padded. I told the family I was coming, rented a car in El Paso, and drove north through the desert. Matteo was kneeling beside the pump house when I arrived. Dust covered his faded jeans. His work shirt was rolled to the elbows, and his brown boots were cracked where the leather flexed. He had calm dark eyes, a close-trimmed beard, and the kind of stillness that made everyone else's hurry look unnecessary. "You must be Natalie," he said. "And you must be the man charging my uncle $14,000. He looked at me for 2 seconds, then smiled. "No. I'm the man who told him it should cost less than $4,000. That was the first honest thing anyone had said to me about the ranch in years. Matteo showed me a cracked pressure tank, corroded wiring, and a bypass line that had been installed backward. He did not talk down to me. He explained each component, then handed me the written estimate with part numbers so I could verify them myself. As we stood beneath the shade of the pump house, he said, "Land usually tells the truth. People who manage it don't always do the same." I thought he was talking about bad contractors. I did not understand that he was warning me about my own family. We spent 4 days repairing the system. At sunset, we sat on the tailgate of his pickup and drank cold soda while the irrigation line clicked back to life. He asked about my work in Fresno. I expected his attention to fade when I started describing payroll reconciliation. Instead, he wanted to know how seasonal workers handled overtime rules and whether small farms could offer benefits through pooled plans. He never bragged. He never asked what I owned. He never touched me without watching my face first. When I returned to California, he called every Sunday at 7. We talked about ordinary things: the price of diesel, my neighbor's loud dog, the desert after rain, the tomato plants he kept alive behind his workshop. Ordinary things became the safest part of my week. My family hated him before they met him. Mom called him the rancher in a tone that made the word sound dirty. Brenda searched his social media, found almost nothing, and announced that a man without vacation photos probably had no money. Aurelio claimed Matteo wanted access to the Herrera property. None of them cared that he had saved us $10,000 on the well or that he had never accepted more than the documented cost of labor. When Matteo proposed beneath the cottonwoods near the irrigation ditch, I said yes before he finished asking. I did not tell my family for 3 days because I wanted a little time when the happiness belonged only to us. The SUV door opened, and Matteo stood outside in a charcoal suit. His boots were polished but still the same repaired pair my sister had mocked online. He was 45, broad-shouldered, sun-browned, and handsome in a way that came from looking directly at life instead of at his own reflection. His eyes were sad, but there was no pity in them. "You don't have to go in," he said. "Half the chapel is empty. Then look at the half that came. My mother said I'm not her daughter if I marry you." He rested one hand on the door but did not reach for me. "I won't tell you what family to keep. I'll only tell you I'm not letting go because they ordered me to." My phone vibrated in my lap. Brenda had posted a video. The camera panned across the chapel's left side, where rows of white wooden chairs sat empty beneath strings of baby's breath. Her voice came through the speaker, bright with amusement. "My sister worked 9 years in California just to marry a dusty ranch hand in an empty church. Even our mom refused to attend this disaster." Cousins had filled the comments with laughing emojis. One wrote, "All those dollars and she still picked a man who smells like a barn." Another asked if Matteo's wedding gift would be a goat. The video had been posted 11 minutes earlier. That meant Brenda had come close enough to film the chapel, then left. Before I arrived, my makeup blurred. I pressed the heel of my hand beneath one eye. "I can't walk past those chairs," I whispered. Matteo held out his arm. "Then walk beside someone who won't leave you alone in front of them." I stepped out. The chapel bells began as we crossed the gravel. Every strike seemed to land inside my chest. Matteo's mother, Elena, waited at the doorway in a pale blue dress. She took both my hands. "Don't count empty seats today," she said. "Count the people who came without asking what they could get from you." Inside, the right side of the chapel was full of ranch workers, neighbors, former teachers, a retired mechanic named Ray who had known Matteo since childhood, and 2 families whose farms he had helped after wildfires. On my side sat 3 distant aunts, my coworker Denise from Fresno, and an older man named Mr. Salazar who ran the money service counter where I used to send cashier's checks before online transfers became easier. I had not invited Mr. Salazar. When he saw me notice him, he touched the brim of his hat and glanced toward Matteo. A woman I did not recognize sat in the 3rd row wearing a sand-colored suit. A leather portfolio rested on her knees. She had silver-streaked black hair, narrow glasses, and a county courthouse visitor badge clipped to her purse. My stomach tightened. The organ music softened. Father Luis smiled at us, but his smile carried the strain of someone holding information he wished he did not have. Matteo and I reached the altar. The chapel smelled of beeswax, roses, and sun-warmed adobe. Father Luis began with a prayer. I tried to listen. Instead, I saw my mother's empty chair, the lace handkerchief I had placed on it, and the tiny reservation card printed with "Mother of the Bride." Just before the vows, Matteo tightened his fingers around mine. "Natalie," he said quietly, "there is something you need to know before you sign your life to anybody, including me." The woman in the 3rd row stood. "My name is Paula Reyes," she said. "I'm a title attorney and the successor trustees counsel for the Rosario Herrera Trust." I heard the words individually, but together they made no sense. "My grandmother's what?" Paula walked toward us and opened the portfolio on the front pew. Inside were a certified trust instrument, county records, and a document bearing my name in blue ink. "At 2 this afternoon, a closing was scheduled involving the Herrera Ranch," she said. "The seller's authority depends on this quitclaim deed, which supposedly transferred your interest 14 months ago." I stared at the signature. It resembled mine from a distance. Up close, the capital N curved backward. Brenda made her N that way. I never had. I didn't sign that. "That is why the closing has been frozen," Paula said. "But the document was notarized, recorded, and used to support a loan application. Someone expected the transfer to be completed before you learned the ranch belongs to you." The chapel became so quiet that I heard the old ceiling fan click. "Belongs to me?" Paula placed the trust document beside the forged deed. "Your grandmother left you the house, the eastern pasture, the well rights, and controlling interest in the remaining acreage. Your mother had a lifetime right to occupy the main house under specific conditions. She never had the right to sell it." I turned to Matteo. How long have you known? Long enough to stop the closing, he said. Not long enough to forgive myself for telling you here. The chapel doors opened behind us. My mother entered first, wearing the plum dress I had paid for. Brenda followed in a cream suit, her phone still in one hand. Aurelio came behind them, breathing hard, his face gray beneath his tan. They did not look like relatives arriving late to a wedding. They looked like people who had learned the locked door to a vault was suddenly standing beside the person they had tried to rob. This is private family business, my mother announced. Paula turned toward her. Forgery involving real property is not private family business, Mrs. Herrera. Brenda lowered her phone. Aurelio forced a laugh. Nobody forged anything. Natalie signed papers years ago. She forgets what she signs because she lives in California and thinks everything here runs by magic. I walked down from the altar, still holding my bouquet. Show me where I signed. He pointed vaguely at the quitclaim deed. There. I mean, show me when. Show me the email. The envelope. The witness. Show me one conversation where I agreed to give away the property I apparently didn't know I owned. His eyes moved to my mother. Mom did not look ashamed. She looked furious that evidence had entered a room where guilt had always been decided by her voice. That ranch has cost us everything, she said. You left. We stayed. You don't know what it takes to keep a house standing in the desert. I know exactly what it costs. I paid for it month by month. Brenda snapped, there it is. Saint Natalie with her spreadsheet. A spreadsheet would have helped me notice you were stealing sooner. The words came out before I could soften them. For the first time in my life, I did not regret failing to soften the truth. Mr. Salazar rose from my side of the chapel with a banker's box in his arms. I kept copies, he said. Mrs. Herrera asked me for duplicate cashier's check records last week. The request felt wrong, so I called Natalie's fiancé. He set the box beside Paula's portfolio. Inside were 9 years of transfer receipts, checks, message printouts, and copies of identification used when my family collected funds. I recognized my own handwriting on old forms and the little notes I had written in the memo lines: roof, MOM medical, water pump, taxes, Brenda school. Paula pulled out a yellow folder. Some of these expenses were legitimate, she said. Many were submitted twice. Several invoices were altered. And the medical records used to justify repeated emergency transfers do not match any treatment received by your mother. I looked at Mom. You had a mass on your liver. Her face changed, not into grief but calculation. Doctors were concerned. I sent $38,000. You always make everything about money. Because you used money to make me believe you might die. Brenda closed her eyes. That was when I knew. Not suspected. Knew. Where did it go? I asked her. She said nothing. Paula removed photographs of a boutique storefront in Albuquerque. Brenda Rose appeared in gold letters above the door. I had seen pictures online and believed her business had been funded by a small business grant. Transfers marked for medical imaging and oncology consultations were deposited into an account used for the boutique lease, Paula said. The bouquet slipped against my dress. Matteo caught it before it fell, but I stepped away from his hand. Was there ever cancer? Mom lifted her chin. I had high blood pressure. The doctor said stress could kill me. You sent me a picture of an oncology building. It was in the same medical complex. I wanted to scream. Instead, my voice disappeared. In its place came memories, sleeping 4 hours between shifts, skipping my friend's funeral because Mom said she needed a test deposit, sitting in a grocery store parking lot calculating whether I could afford another $600 without overdrawing. Every sacrifice I had treated as love returned wearing the face of a receipt. Aurelio moved toward the aisle. This has gone far enough. The closing is cancelled, so everybody can calm down. Matteo blocked his path without touching him. The closing is not the only problem. Stay out of it, ranch hand. Matteo's expression did not change. The loan against the property was assigned last night. The holder knows the collateral documents are fraudulent. Aurelio stopped. Brenda stared at Matteo. How would you know who holds the loan? Paula answered before he could. Because the buyer listed for today's transaction is Viento Claro Land and Energy. My mother's anger vanished. That company offered $2.4 million, she whispered. Matteo removed his suit jacket and laid it over the front pew with deliberate care. The company offered to lease 18 acres for a community wind project. It never offered to buy Natalie's ranch. Aurelio altered the proposal and used it to solicit a bridge loan. Your company? Brenda asked. Matteo looked at me, and what I saw in his face frightened me more than pride would have. I founded Viento Claro 11 years ago, he said. I'm the managing partner. The dusty ranch hand my family had mocked was the man whose company they had been trying to deceive. The land they wanted to steal from me had brought him into their documents. The wedding they boycotted had gathered the only people capable of exposing them. And suddenly I had a new question. If Matteo had known enough to save my ranch, why had the man I trusted most allowed me to reach the altar without knowing who he really was? I did not marry him at noon. At 12:17, I sat in the chapel's small sacristy with my skirt gathered around me and a bottle of water pressed to my wrist. My mother sat across a narrow table. Brenda stood beside a cabinet of folded linens. Aurelio paced near the door until Paula told him to sit or leave. Matteo remained outside because I had asked him to. For once, no one could blame his presence for the questions I was asking. Why didn't Grandma's lawyer contact me? I asked. Paula folded her hands. The attorney who drafted the trust retired and died 4 years later. Notices went to the ranch address. Your mother signed for them. The trust required annual statements to you, but none were sent. When the county digitized older records, the successor firm discovered inconsistencies. Matteo's title review forced us to reopen the file. Mom rubbed her thumb across her wedding ring, a habit she used when preparing a lie. Your grandmother was confused at the end. The trust was signed 6 years before she died, Paula said. 2 physicians certified capacity. There is also a recorded statement. My mother's thumb stopped. A recording? Yes. You had no right to dig up family pain. Paula's voice stayed level. My job is to carry out Rosario's instructions, not protect anyone from them. I looked at Mom. Did you know the ranch was mine? It was supposed to stay in the family. That wasn't my question. Your grandmother played favorites. Did you know? She glanced toward Brenda. We knew there were papers. Brenda made a sound like a breath caught behind her teeth. How long? I asked. No one answered. Paula opened another folder. The first recorded attempt to challenge the trust was 3 years ago. I turned to my sister. You asked me for tuition 3 years ago. I was in school. You called me selfish for asking why the roof needed a second repair. Did you know then? Her arms tightened across her chest. Mom said Grandma never meant to cut us out. Did you know? Yes. That single word hurt more than the video. Brenda and I had shared a room as girls. When our father left, I packed her lunches and braided her hair while Mom worked breakfast shifts. I had saved for her first laptop. I had spent a night in an airport after a cancelled flight because Brenda cried that she could not celebrate graduation without me. She had known for 3 years that the property was mine while telling me I had no right to ask how my money was spent. Why didn't you tell me? Her face crumpled, but I did not know whether she was grieving me or herself. Because if you knew, you would stop sending money. The honesty of it stunned the room. So you kept me ignorant to keep me useful. Mom said you would sell and abandon us. I paid to keep the ranch alive. From California, she shot back. You got to have a career. You got to leave. I stayed here listening to Mom say every broken pipe was our last disaster. Do you know what it felt like to watch you send one payment and solve what we couldn't? It felt like help, Brenda. It was supposed to feel like help. It felt like you were better than us. So you stole from me until you felt equal? She sat down hard. Tears ran over the makeup she had applied for the wedding she claimed she would not attend. Mom leaned forward. We did what families do. We shifted money where it was needed. You invented cancer. I never used that exact word. I laughed once. It sounded terrible in the little room. You sent me messages saying the specialist was worried it had spread. She looked toward the crucifix on the wall as if God might object to my tone. Paula slid one more document across the table. Natalie, there is a related matter involving your social security number. The air changed. I knew it before I read it. The application was for a $310,000 bridge loan secured by the ranch and personally guaranteed under my name. It listed my Fresno address, my employer, my salary, and an electronic signature. A copy of my driver's license had been attached. Where did you get this? I asked. Aurelio stared at the floor. My mother said, we needed to protect the house. You protected the house by stealing my identity? The wind deal would have paid it back. There was no sale. We were told there would be. Paula tapped a page. The original Viento Claro term sheet is a lease proposal with conditions. The version submitted to the lender changes annual lease payment to purchase payment and removes 2 pages of environmental restrictions. I looked at Aurelio. You altered it. His jaw worked. A lender wouldn't move fast enough on a lease. What did you need $310,000 for? Back taxes, repairs, operating costs. Mr. Salazar, who had joined us at my request, placed a set of transfer confirmations beside the loan. A large portion went to a private bookmaker in El Paso, he said. Aurelio stood so fast the chair scraped the tile. You have no idea what you're talking about. I know the recipient account appears 2 days after 7 of Natalie's transfers, Mr. Salazar said. I know you asked her for emergency property tax money after the county bill had already been paid. I know the same amount moved to that account. I remembered Aurelio calling me late at night, his voice shaking. He said the county would auction the ranch if I could not send $8,700 by Friday. I had emptied the small retirement loan account I used for emergencies. He had called me his angel. How much do you owe? I asked. That's not your concern. You used my name. It became my concern before I knew it existed. He turned on my mother. Tell her why we did it. Mom's face went pale. Tell me what? I asked. Brenda whispered, there was an investor. The forged transfer, the false wind proposal, and the bridge loan had not been there. Only plan. A land broker named Curtis Vane had approached Aurelio after county maps identified the ridge above our eastern pasture as a promising site for renewable development. Vane promised the family a private $180,000 consulting payment if they delivered the property with clear title before Viento Claro completed its environmental review. He intended to flip the rights to a larger developer. My mother had agreed to receive the money through Brenda's boutique. You were going to sell my land to a broker and make it look like Matteo's company bought it, I said. Mom shook her head. We were going to save what was left. Save it for whom? For all of us. By making sure I had nothing. You had California. There it was, the belief beneath every demand. Because I had escaped the town where we grew up, any peace I earned belonged to the people who stayed. Because my paycheck was larger, my exhaustion counted less. Because I had no children, my future was communal property. Because I loved them, they believed I had consented to disappear. I looked at Paula. Is my credit ruined? The lender has been notified of suspected identity theft. A fraud alert is active. There will be an investigation, but we moved before the account reported as delinquent under your credit profile. Who moved? Matteo's counsel, me, and a federal credit union investigator in Fresno. I thought of him waiting beyond the door. How did he know my social security number was involved? Paula hesitated. During due diligence, his company received the altered documents from Vane. Matteo recognized your address and signature. He asked an outside attorney to review the chain of title. When the loan holder threatened a foreclosure action, Viento Claro purchased the note yesterday to keep it from being transferred to an aggressive collector. He bought a $310,000 debt. At a discount, because the lender knew the collateral was disputed. His company now holds the note while the fraud claim is resolved. It cannot foreclose under his direction. My mother spoke quickly. You see? He owns your debt now. We warned you he wanted the ranch. For a second, fear slid into the exact place she aimed it. Matteo had hidden his company, his wealth, and the fact that he had placed himself between my family and a foreclosure. Good intentions did not erase secrecy. I had spent years being managed through withheld information. I could not marry another person while wondering what he had decided I was not ready to know. I stood. Everybody stays here. Mom reached for my wrist. Natalie, don't make this uglier. I pulled away. You posted my empty wedding online. You forged my signature. You faked medical fear, stole my identity, and tried to sell my inheritance before I could read it. Ugly arrived before I did. Matteo was standing alone near the altar when I came out. Most guests had moved to the courtyard, where Elena and Denise were serving water and asking people not to speculate online. The flowers still framed the place where we were supposed to have said our vows. It looked like a stage after the actors had forgotten their lines. Tell me everything, I said. He nodded. Ask anything. Why did you pretend to be a ranch hand? I didn't. I work cattle on my family's place. I repair wells because I know how. I also built a company. None of those things cancel the others. You let my family call you poor. Correcting them would have required me to care what they respected. You let me believe you. We're only consulting for Viento Claro. Payne tightened his face. Yes. Why? At first, because people change when they hear I control investment money. Later, because I was ashamed I hadn't told you at first. Every month I waited made the truth heavier. And when did you learn about the deed? 17 days ago. The loan? 8 days ago. My social security number? 3 days ago. You proposed 7 months ago. You could have told me who you were then. I should have. There was no excuse in his voice, which made it harder to stay angry and more important that I did. Did you arrange this reveal at the wedding? No. Paula planned to meet you privately this morning. Your flight was delayed, your mother stopped answering, and Aurelio moved the closing from Monday to today after learning a title objection was coming. When Brenda posted from the chapel, we realized they were nearby and watching you. Paula said you had to be notified immediately before any new document appeared. I asked Father Luis for a private room. He thought the ceremony should begin because guests were already seated. That was a mistake. A large one. Yes. Did you buy the debt because you expect me to sign the win lease? No. Would you release the note if I never sign anything? With your company? Yes. Put that in writing. It is already in writing. He reached for a folder on the front pew, then stopped before touching it. Paula has an escrow instruction. If the fraud claim confirms you did not authorize the loan, Viento Claro will release every claim against the ranch. If for some reason the claim fails, I personally guarantee you the option to repay only the discounted purchase amount over 20 years at zero interest. No wind agreement is required. Why would your partners agree? Because our company was exposed to fraud through Vane, because preserving the evidence protects us, and because I used my own distribution as collateral for the guarantee. I stared at him. You risked your money without asking me. I risked mine. I did not promise yours. You still decided what I should know. And that was wrong. He did not step closer. He did not use the crisis to ask for forgiveness. He simply stood there in the boots my sister had mocked and let me see that a decent man could make a serious mistake without turning my hurt into an attack on him. Do you still want to marry me? I asked. More than I did this morning, because you are asking the questions everyone hoped you would be too scared to ask. That is not an answer about today. Today, tomorrow, or a year from now. But not if marrying me feels like another document someone rushed you to sign. My breath broke. I sat on the front pew. I don't know who anyone is. Matteo sat 4 feet away, leaving the space between us untouched. Then don't decide until you know who you are when nobody is demanding anything. Paula came from the sacristy carrying a tablet. There is something Rosario left for you, she said. You do not have to watch it now. I almost said no. Then I saw my grandmother's face frozen on the screen, seated at her kitchen table in a green cardigan, her silver hair combed back. The timestamp was 12 years old. Play it. Rosario looked slightly to the left of the camera, toward the attorney recording her. My name is Rosario Herrera, she began. I am making this statement because love becomes dangerous when people use it to hide the accounts. My knees weakened. She spoke for 7 minutes. She said the ranch would pass to me because I had returned during high school summers to help with irrigation after everyone else found excuses. She said Mom could live in the house as long as taxes were paid, the land was not pledged without trustee approval, and no beneficiary was pressured to transfer her share. She said Brenda would receive a funded education account and Aurelio had already received his inheritance when she paid his business debts twice. Then Grandma leaned closer to the camera. Natalie, if they tell you asking for proof means you do not love them, do not believe it. Honest love is not afraid of clear accounts. You have spent your life earning a chair at tables where you were already feeding everyone. Stop asking permission to sit. The video ended. I cried without elegance. I bent forward in my wedding dress and covered my face. Matteo stayed where he was until I held out my hand. Then he crossed the space and knelt in front of me. I'm sorry, he said. For what? For making one more truth arrive too late. Don't ever do it again. I won't. That is not a romantic promise. It's a condition. I understand. I believed he did because he did not smile. In the courtyard, the guests waited beneath strings of white paper lanterns. Some had left, but most remained. My mother stood apart beside the chapel wall. Brenda's phone was no longer in her hand. Aurelio had disappeared until Paula told us a sheriff's deputy had stopped him near the parking lot long enough to copy information from his truck. No one had arrested him. Not yet. The investigation was only beginning. I asked Father Luis for the microphone. The courtyard quieted. This morning, I said, my family told me not to enter this chapel because the man I love was beneath us. They posted empty chairs to prove I had been abandoned. What I learned inside is that those chairs were empty because the people assigned to them believed my love was a payment plan. My mother moved toward me. Natalie, please. I raised one hand. For 42 years, that gesture had belonged to her. The power of using it once made the courtyard feel different. No, Mom. You spoke when I was alone in a car. I'm speaking now. She stopped. I sent money home for 9 years because I believed family meant carrying weight together. I don't regret helping with real taxes, real repairs, or real food. I regret allowing shame to replace records. I regret believing that being a good daughter required me to stay uninformed. Brenda covered her mouth. This is not a public trial, I continued. I will not describe every document. There are professionals who will handle them. But I will say this, no one is entitled to your name, your credit, your labor, or your future because they share your blood. Someone near the back whispered, Amen. I looked at Matteo. And no one gets to hide the truth from me because they think they are protecting me. He nodded once. So are you canceling? Brenda asked. Her voice was small. I looked at the chapel, the flowers, the people who had remained through heat and scandal, and the man who had accepted my anger without trying to control it. My wedding had not become empty. It had become accurate. No, I said. I am changing the guest list in my heart. Father Luis asked if Matteo and I wanted time. Matteo said, as much as she wants. I took his hand. I have had enough people decide my timing. I choose now. We returned to the altar at 1:26. My mother sat in the last row because I allowed her to witness, not because I had forgiven her. Brenda sat beside her, crying silently. Aurelio was gone. The left side of the chapel was still mostly empty, but the emptiness no longer accused me. It was clean space. When Father Luis asked whether I came freely, I heard the question in a way I never had before. I do, I said. Matteo's voice shook when he answered the same. At our small reception, we ate green chili stew, brisket, and wedding cake beneath cottonwoods. A local trio played guitars. There were no crystal chandeliers, no designer favors, and no choreographed entrance. There was wind lifting the paper lanterns and dust settling on polished shoes. It was more beautiful than the expensive hotel ballroom Brenda had told me a successful woman should demand. Someone posted a new video. This one showed Matteo and me walking out of the chapel while Elena threw flower petals and Mr. Salazar cried openly. The caption read, "She walked in with empty seats and walked out owning her name." By evening, Brenda's mocking video had disappeared. Screenshots had not. The days after the wedding were less cinematic. There were no instant handcuffs, no judge striking a gavel while my family gasped. There were phone calls, affidavits, credit freezes, certified letters, forensic document review, and meetings that smelled like coffee and printer toner. The county placed a notice of disputed title on the ranch records. Paula petitioned to confirm me as successor trustee and beneficiary. The lender's fraud unit acknowledged that the electronic signature originated from an internet connection registered to Aurelio. The notary stamp on the quitclaim deed belonged to a man who had reported it stolen 18 months earlier. Curtis Vane denied knowing the deed was forged. Then investigators found messages in which he told Aurelio to get the California sister out of the chain before she asks for appraisal numbers. That sentence ended his claim of innocence. The bridge loan never appeared as a delinquent account on my credit report. Viento Claro retained the note only long enough to preserve evidence, then released the ranch collateral after the lender accepted the identity theft finding. Matteo showed me every page before anything was filed. He also gave me access to the company's full due diligence record and asked an independent attorney, chosen by me, to review the wind proposal. Trust did not return because he opened a folder. It returned in small decisions. He told me when he did not know an answer. He stopped meetings when people spoke around me instead of to me. He never used the $2.4 million figure my mother had misunderstood to pressure me. In fact, the full projected value was not a purchase price at all. It was the estimated total of lease payments, grid incentives, maintenance spending, and community investment over 25 years. Your family saw a large number and stopped reading the nouns. Around it, he said. I spent my career explaining that mistake to employees, I replied. I still made it at home. Home is where numbers learn to wear faces. That sounded like the man I knew. Brenda hired a lawyer and initially claimed Aurelio had handled all paperwork. The claim lasted until Paula produced emails from Brenda's boutique account attaching my driver's license and asking whether a scanned signature would be good enough for closing. She called me 14 times in one day. I answered the 15th. I didn't understand how serious it was, she said. You understood enough to hide it. Aurelio said the wind company would pay before anyone checked. You mean before I checked? Mom was scared. Mom was offered $180,000. She thought she deserved something after taking care of Grandma. Grandma gave her a lifetime home. She tried to trade it for cash and leave me the debt. Brenda cried. I waited. I had spent years rushing to stop the sound of her pain. That afternoon, I let it be hers. Are you going to send me to prison? She asked. I am going to tell the truth. What the truth does after that is not something you get to make me carry. Her boutique had been built with money labeled for our mother's cancer care. Once that became public in the investigation, Brenda lost several local clients. She sold her inventory, closed the storefront, and entered a restitution agreement that required her to repay funds she could document receiving. It was not the dramatic ruin some people online wanted. It was slower and more useful. Every month, she had to write a check with my name on it and remember that the money had once traveled in the opposite direction. Aurelio's consequences were harsher. The forged deed, loan application, altered term sheet, and gambling transfers created more problems than any one family explanation could cover. He vanished for 6 weeks, then surrendered through an attorney after the bookmaker's associates began looking for him too. He eventually accepted a plea agreement involving fraud charges, restitution, and supervised release. My mother said I had destroyed her brother. No, I told her. I stopped volunteering to be the wall between him and what he did. She did not speak to me for 4 months. The silence hurt. Freedom often does it first because the nervous system mistakes familiar pain for belonging. I returned to Fresno with Matteo after the wedding and kept my job. I could have quit after the trust was confirmed, but I did not want the ranch or my marriage to become another reason I gave up an identity I had built. Matteo divided his time between New Mexico projects and California partnerships. We rented a modest house outside Fresno with a yard just large enough for his tomato plants. On Sunday evenings, we reviewed our accounts at the kitchen table. The first time he opened a spreadsheet containing his company interests, I felt embarrassed by the amount of information. "You don't have to show me all this," I said. "I know. Then why are you?" "Because secrets grow best where people confuse privacy with power." I added my own accounts beside his. For the first time, transparency did not feel like an audit. It felt like rest. We spent the next year restoring the Herrera Ranch carefully. The main house did not become a mansion. The roof stopped leaking. The kitchen floor was leveled. The well received a modern control system that cost $4,380, not $14,000. I hired Mr. Salazar as a paid local administrator because trust should never be demanded as free labor. Every expense required an invoice, every invoice went into a shared digital folder, and no one mocked the spreadsheet. I commissioned an independent environmental review before signing anything with Viento Claro. The best plan used 3 mid-sized turbines on the rocky ridge, far from the house and outside the most sensitive bird corridor. The ranch retained all surface ownership. Water rights remained with the trust. The lease included decommissioning funds, noise limits, and local hiring preferences. Matteo recused himself from the company vote. "You don't have to do that," I told him. "I do if I want you to know the agreement survives without our marriage." That was the kind of romance I understood now, not flowers hiding fine print, but love strong enough to invite independent counsel. The first turbine rose in October. The crane arrived before dawn, its lights moving across the desert like a slow constellation. I stood with Matteo, Elena, Mr. Salazar, and 3 students from the county community college who had been hired as paid interns. When the blades finally turned, they did not roar. They made a low, steady sweep above the land my family had nearly traded away. The wind paid the property tax. It funded well maintenance. It supported 3 annual scholarships for local women studying accounting, electrical systems, or land management. Each scholarship included a workshop on contracts and identity protection. I named the program Rosario's Ledger. My mother learned about it from the local newspaper. She came to the ranch on a cold morning carrying a grocery bag full of old photographs. I watched her walk from the gate because I had changed. The locks. Her hair looked thinner. For a moment, I saw the woman who used to work double shifts and sleep with her uniform on top of the blanket so she would not wake us while dressing. Pain does not erase context. Context does not erase choice. I met her on the porch. "I found these in Grandma's closet," she said. "Why were you in the house?" Brenda still had a box from before the court order. "These were inside." She handed me the bag. There were photographs of Rosario on horseback, my father repairing a fence before he left, Brenda and me splashing in an irrigation ditch, and my mother at 23 holding me against her shoulder. At the bottom lay an envelope with my name in Grandma's handwriting. I opened it beneath the cottonwood. The letter was shorter than the video. Rosario wrote that she had watched my mother become frightened of poverty and then use that fear to control everyone around her. She wrote that Mom had confused being owed compassion with being owed obedience. She asked me not to hate her, but she also asked me not to finance her dishonesty. "Did you read this?" I asked. Mom looked toward the turbines. "Years ago. Even then, she had not brought me the letter." "Why now?" "Because I don't know how else to talk to you. The truth would be a beginning." She sat on the porch step. "I was angry at your grandmother. She left you the ranch because you were the responsible one. Do you know what that said about me? It said she trusted me with the ranch. It said I failed. You turned her decision into a sentence about your worth, then punished me for it." Tears filled her eyes. This time they remained quiet. No medical crisis followed. No deadline. No amount attached. "When you sent money," she said, "I felt like you were proving you had escaped me. I was trying to keep you safe. I know that now. You knew it then. You just also knew fear made me send more." She nodded. It was the first full admission she had given me. "Will you forgive me?" Behind her, the blades turned against a pale blue sky. A year earlier, I would have searched for the answer that hurt her least. Now I searched for the one that was true. "Maybe," I said. "But forgiveness is not access." It is not money. It is not a key to this house, and it is not permission to rewrite what happened. Can I come inside? Not today. Her face tightened. Then she breathed through it. All right. That all right was the smallest thing she had ever given me and the first thing that felt like change. Brenda's repair took longer. For 8 months, our only communication was the restitution notice. Then she sent a package containing the lace handkerchief from the empty chair at my wedding. She had found it after everyone left the chapel. Her note said, I kept telling myself you abandoned us because admitting we used you would mean I had to become someone else. I don't expect you to help me become her. I did not call immediately. A good apology does not demand a reward on arrival. Months later, we met at a diner in Las Cruces. Brenda worked in the alterations department of a bridal shop. She looked tired and more real without the carefully branded clothes from her boutique. Do you hate me? She asked. Sometimes. She flinched. I also love you. Both can be true while I decide whether trust grows back. She nodded. I brought receipts. She placed a folder on the table showing her restitution payments and the source of each dollar. We both started laughing, not because the past was funny, but because Grandma would have appreciated the gesture. We did not become close again in one meal. We became honest for 40 minutes. That was enough. Matteo still wears dusty boots. At community meetings, people sometimes assume he is there to repair equipment and direct questions to the younger men in suits. He lets them finish, then introduces himself and asks the one question no one prepared for. He says underestimation is free information. I no longer care whether anyone calls him a rancher. The word is not an insult. It means he understands that stewardship is measured by what remains after you have had the power to take. Our marriage is not perfect. I still go silent when I feel cornered. He still withholds small worries until they grow heavy because he thinks protection means carrying them alone. When that happens, we return to the kitchen table. We open the account, the email, the fear, or the mistake. We practice clear books in places money cannot measure. On our second anniversary, we visited San Isidro Chapel. The white chairs were stacked in a storage room. Father Luis let us sit alone near the altar. Sunlight moved across the adobe wall where Paula had first opened the forged deed. Do you wish we had postponed? Matteo asked. I thought about it. I wish you had told me sooner. I wish my family had never made the day into a trap. But I don't wish I had chosen you after seeing the truth. There is a difference. There has to be. Outside, the wind moved through the cottonwoods. My phone showed a message from the scholarship committee. The first recipient of Rosario's ledger had completed her accounting certificate and accepted a job with a farm cooperative. Her note thanked us for teaching her that paperwork was not cold or unloving. It was how people protected promises. I stood in the same doorway where I had once believed empty seats proved I was alone. They did not. I had walked into that chapel accompanied by every night shift I survived, every dollar I earned, every receipt I kept, and the voice of a grandmother who had defended me from the future. I walked out with a husband who learned that love could not choose my truths for me, a ranch returned to its rightful name, and a boundary strong enough to let forgiveness approach without letting theft follow behind it. My mother had told me not to call myself her daughter if I married the dusty man waiting at the altar. She was wrong about what I would lose. That day, I did not stop being her daughter. I stopped being the account she could empty whenever fear made her cruel. I stopped paying for a chair at a family table built from my own labor. I stopped asking people who benefited from my silence whether I was allowed to speak. The turbines turn above Rosario's land now, steady and bright in the New Mexico sun. Some evenings, I stand beneath them with Matteo and listen to the long sweep of the blades. From far away, they look almost delicate. Up close, you understand how much strength it takes to turn resistance into power. That is exactly what the wind taught me. What looks humble from a distance may be holding up an entire future. What looks like loyalty may only be fear wearing a family name. And the moment a woman finally asks to see the records, every person who profited from the confusion will accuse her of destroying the peace. Let them. Peace built on a stolen signature is only silence with good manners. I know the difference now.